My name is Jackie Werner, and I am the Scholarly Communications and Research Librarian at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. And today I'm going to go over the basics of how to choose a journal for publication. And Scholarly Snippets, if this is your first time, is a series that helps you advance your research skills and supports your scholarly activities. And after this session, you should be able to identify and compare potential journals for publication, as well as have an idea as to what you're looking for when you're comparing them. So, speaking of that, the first question you want to ask when you're choosing a journal to publish in is, what are you looking for? Why do you want to publish? There are many reasons, many factors you might be interested in. Maybe you want to publish in a prestigious journal to get tenure. Maybe you want people in your field to build off this research, to cite it, to continue to work with it. Maybe you just want to publish something to go on your residency application. Or maybe you really want your work to be freely available to anyone, whether or not they're affiliated with an academic institution. All right, once you know this, you could start identifying possible journals. And you should be doing this. You should think about what journals you're publishing in from the very start of your research. At least by the time you start writing anything down, you should have an idea of what journals you might be interested in. Luckily, the very first thing I recommend you do will be a part of your research already. When you're doing a literature review, that is my most preferred method to find a journal for publication, because every article that you're looking at your literature review, look at what journals they're published in. This is a list of journals that will publish papers that are relevant to your research by definition. So this is a great place to start. Some different databases will allow you, when you're doing a search, to see which journals are showing up the most in your results. Others, you might have to do it manually. If you have a small list, you could just eyeball it. But these are places I would look at first. Second thing you should look at, if you have colleagues or people in your lab who were not included in your literature review, you can search for them, do an author search for their name. Where are they publishing? Ask around. If your lab has been publishing papers for the past few years on this project, there's an obvious place to publish. If your colleagues tend to flock towards a specific journal, specific publisher, there might be a reason for that. And I'll talk about what some of those reasons could be. And the last thing you can check. So you have a list of journals that have already published, but you want to see what journals are out there in the field. How do they compare to each other? So there are a few different ways you could look at this. Besides just, say, asking around, seeing what, it'll be easy to find out that Nature or Science are pretty prestigious. Different databases will allow you to compare sources. And the one that we have at PCOM is Scopus. A lot of you probably have that. I believe Web of Science has a similar function. And another one, if you are interested in having your work freely available for all, is the DOAJ, Directory of Open Access Journals, which is free online. So let's start with Scopus. If you do a sources search, you can then search for specific names or see all journals within a specific subject area. Here I searched for neurology, clinical, and I got 548 results. This is why I don't start with this step. It's very easy to get overwhelmed going through 548 results. And the journals at the top may not be your best bet for a multitude of reasons. But Scopus has a lot of different information about these different sources. If you click on the source title here, you could just see a lot of different information, link to the journal website. And it starts being sorted by something called Cite Score. I'll go over this in a moment, but basically it's a citation metric that shows how much will you get cited if you publish in this journal. So the raw numbers don't really matter, but comparing it, you could see that at the top of the list, Lancet Neurology has a score of 54.2, go down 4, and you're down to 24.5. So that kind of gives you an idea of how these journals are in comparison to each other. But you could see what percent are cited, how many documents were published within a certain time period, and so on. And you could also set up really nice in-depth graphs comparing, I believe it's up to 5 different journals. So if you really want to see what are the most prestigious journals in the field, and you want to get into the nitty-gritty of comparing them, check out Scopus. Next thing we have is, I forgot to put the actual screenshot of the Directory of Open Access Journals, but DOAJ is a collection of journals that are freely available online. If you are very interested in publishing open access, then you can search the DOAJ by subject again. And it gives a lot of information about each journal and a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in the next few slides. This doesn't have a good way of sorting by any sort of impact factor or citation metrics. So a DOAJ search is good if you're trying to see what's out there and you specifically want open access. All right, so once you have a list of journals that you're interested in, maybe you got the list from your literature review, a few from your lab, and a few that looked interesting from the list on Scopus. Then you have to go in and evaluate them. And there are many different ways to do this. First thing you want to do is go to the journal website. Easiest way to do that is just straight up Google it. A lot of databases are going to have links to specific articles from which you could get to the main page of the journal, but really just Google the journal name, make sure it's the correct one by the correct publisher. And things like the aims and scope and instructions for authors, they're going to tell you all sorts of things that you need to know. And we'll go over those shortly. But that's going to tell you important things like, does this journal actually fit your research? And next thing you want to do after you look over as much of that as you could stand reading through, do an article search. Search for broad keywords or specific keywords depending on the journal. If you're in a neurology journal, search specifically for whatever disease you're looking at. If you're looking at Nature, search for neurology. See what kind of articles are being published. And the last thing you'll want to check out is looking at the impact factor or other citation metrics of that journal. And citation metrics. There are a ton of different types of these metrics. Impact factor, site score. There's a list of like 10 more I have off the top of my head. But in general, what these are telling you is some variation of how many citations are you going to get if you publish in this journal. So some variation of citations, a number of citations divided by the total articles published within a certain time period. So if a journal publishes one entire article last year, it was cited twice. Then the citation factor would be 2 divided by 1, so 2. And that's generally what you're working on. A lot of the different citation factors are, they're going to do, some of them can be compared across fields. Some of them can't. Some of them weight it so that like a citation from Nature is going to be worth more than a citation from my first journal. And if you're interested in citation metrics, the really important thing is the comparison, not the raw numbers. So going back to Scopus, the Lancet Neurology having a site score of 54.2 means nothing. It means more if you compare it to Acta Neuropathologica and 5 other journals in this list and get an idea of what the range of site scores might be. So if you're interested in citation metrics and publishing in a prestigious journal, then go into Scopus, go into Web of Science and compare different journals. And Web of Science has impact factor, which is the most well-known citation metric. And usually a lot of journal websites are going to have their impact factor listed, especially if it's good. All right. So here's some examples of where to find all this information. BMC Neurology. There, usually you're going to look for the same type of thing. About, submission guidelines, information for authors, about this journal, and so on. And the information you want is going to be on the website under something that sounds like that in the main menu. BMC Neurology is great. It lists, it has links to some of the specific things you want to look for. And here you have another journal, Frontiers in Neurology. Here the impact factor and site score, both citation metrics, are listed right on the main page. And then if you click on the hamburger menu, you see all the information you might be interested in, such as mission, author guidelines, etc. And the things you really want to be aware of when you're looking at these journals. One is the acceptance rate. Usually, the higher impact a journal is, the lower acceptance rate it's going to have. And you can only apply to one journal at a time. This isn't like applying for school, where you have your long shot, your safety schools, and like 10 in the middle. You get to apply to one journal at a time. And the most prestigious journal may not be the best for your needs. And this is going back to what you asked at the beginning. Why are you publishing? If you want to make sure the people in your field read this, are they always going to be reading Nature and Science cover to cover? Or are they reading the smaller, more specific journal in your field every month that comes out? Next thing you want to look at, APCs, or article processing charges. Open access journals need a way to make money if they're not relying on subscriptions. And that means that authors have to pay for it. This is not a scam. We'll talk very briefly about that in the predatory journals bullet point. But APCs should be listed before, should be listed on the website. Absolutely know this before you submit. Some institutions are going to have open access funding or agreements with specific publishers. If you look for this before you choose a journal, you might say, hey, I could publish in BMC and the library will pay for it. Also, many grants will pay for open access funding as long as you know about it beforehand and say, hey, I'm planning to apply to whatever this journal is, that's $2,000 in the grant. And sometimes you can't publish open access because you don't have a few $1,000s lying around. If you don't have an institutional agreement or grant funding, then there are ways to make things open access afterwards. Different type of open access, usually an embargo, but usually you could get something available for free. Next, you want to look up where are these articles going to be archived? If you went from a literature review, then you had to find these articles in some fashion. So like if you found an article in PubMed, you know, oh, it's going to be in PubMed. And a lot of websites will list where they're archived. You could also just go to the databases, search for a title you saw on the website, and see if they pop up. This is super important because if this journal isn't archived in PubMed or Scopus or Embase, then who's actually going to find it to read it? Another thing to look out for is copyright. Is having control of your work important for you? A lot of publishers take copyright when you publish with them. So you're not legally able to put your work wherever you want. Usually open access journals let you retain copyright. And there are also author agreements out there. SPARC is one, SPARC, that gives you a framework for negotiating with publishers and keeping copyright of your work. But if you want to go the simple way, look for open access if you want copyright. And predatory journals. I have done an entire presentation on this, but in short, predatory journals are scam open access journals that don't deliver what they claim and just try to rake in those APCs. One of the best ways to avoid this, to avoid predatory journals, is just search for articles in scholarly databases. If you find something in PubMed and in Scopus, if you found it to cite it, if it's a well-regarded journal, then that's probably not predatory. When you're looking at a journal website, if you're not sure if something's predatory, look for a professional presentation. Are there a lot of typos? Make sure it lists exact fees. Make sure you can find them before you submit. If something's too good to be true, be wary. For example, I have seen journals that promise peer review in 2 days. This is not physically possible. And the last tip is if they contact you, be wary of them. Unless you are a prominent scholar in the field, those emails that say, I really want you to publish your article, insert name here in our journal. They go after a lot of new researchers, but even established researchers. There is no limit to people who will get caught by predatory journals because they're really trying to get money. So if there's any journal you're not sure if it's legit or not, go with your gut. Look at the website in depth, and also ask your librarians. If you have a research or scholarly communication librarian or a research division, then they'll be able to help you go over a website, figure out if something's predatory. All right. And that, if you'll let me click on, that is a brief introduction to how to choose a journal and what is important to look for in journal websites. So we're going to post a survey in chat. And also our next workshop for scholarly snippets is on March 15th, how to read a scientific paper. And that will be done by another PCOM librarian, Kevin Bradford, who I believe is in the audience here. Hi, Kevin. And all right, that is it. And I believe I answered most of the questions that I was emailed beforehand. But if any of you have other related questions about finding journals or so on, then feel free to ask.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
So there are several questions in the chat. So going back to the beginning, which free citation metric tools do you recommend? This individual doesn't have access to Web of Science / Scopus.
So one that is freely available is Eigenfactor. Let me type that.
Someone else did bring that up in the chat as well later on.
Oh, excellent.
But feel free to bring it up if you want to.
I halfway typed it. So yes, actually, let me stop sharing because I believe I have the specifics of that right over here. But what I would also recommend is just checking out their websites, because a lot of them are going to be showing their impact factor, because it's a measure of authenticity. So they want to put it out there, even if it's not going to be like 50 or 200 or whatever of the greatest journals. All right, let me grab Eigenfactor. Okay, so Eigenfactor is, it's on eigenfactor.org. And this scales citations from influential journals higher, as the one that I mentioned. And it is scaled so that you can compare different fields. Still may not be the most useful information comparing a Shakespeare journal versus a neurology journal. But you can do it and get an idea of how prestigious are these in the field. All right, let me see. Oh yes, please do get involved with scholarly snippets. And yes, Terry Gottschall mentioned Think, Check, Submit, which, thank you, that is a fantastic resource for evaluating journals. And it gives you a checklist to walk through. And here are all of the questions that you can go through to say, is this a good journal? If you're getting if you have kind of a gut feeling that this is off, you could just go through the checklist and say, ah, yes, it misspelled the word science 4 times. That's the bad sign I was forgetting. And less obvious things than that. All right, and yes, Steve Clancy mentioned that some articles from predatory journals do wind up in PubMed because everything funded by NIH grants automatically has to go into PubMed Central. So being in PubMed is not a 100% guarantee that the journal isn't predatory. What I would recommend then, check the DOAJ, Directory of Open Access Journals. That also occasionally gets predatory journals because nothing is really simple. but the more ways you use to check something, the more likely it is that you're getting the full picture of what's going on. See if it's in different databases. Is it in the directory of open access journals? Does the website look professional? And so on. All right. Okay, and that's all the questions I saw in chat. Oh, yes. And Steve said he checks to see if they are indexed in Medline, which is the part of PubMed that goes through a vetting procedure. So yes, you can select only Medline journals in PubMed. All right. I feel like I have one question. Oh yes, I did get one question about funding. And that is a workshop that many people have been interested in, looking for grants. So keep an eye out on Scholarly Snippets, and hopefully we'll get one of those for you now. And yes, definitely, if there are any topics that you'd really like to hear, tell us, and we'll see if we could get a librarian to talk about them. All right. Thank you all. And if you have any questions after this, feel free to email me, and I will be sending my slides to Scholarly Snippets, so you'll be able to download them.